Hello and welcome to Pastor's Perspective. I'm Brian Perez. Great to have you with us today, whether on the radio or maybe you're watching us online on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, or you're listening on a podcast after the fact. Well, we are here Monday through Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. We open up the phone lines to answer the questions you might have about the Bible, the Christian faith, just about anything that you want to talk about. 888-564-6173 is our number. If you're watching us online, you see it right there on the bottom of your screen, 888-564-6173. And here to answer your questions today, we've got Brian Brodersen, the Pastor Emeritus of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And on screen, we've got author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway. He's the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. How you guys doing?
Great to be with you guys.
How are we doing? Yes.
You have to think about it.
Doing great.
Yay.
No, my mind was kind of just consumed with the graphite apologist.
Oh, yes.
Text that I got from Bobby with a great picture. That was a good self-portrait. My goodness, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, hopefully it looked like me.
Can you, do you want to show our listeners?
Well, you can't show our listeners. You can show our viewers.
Oh, right.
But I get what you're saying.
It'll take a bit. Am I on a delay?
Look at that.
No, that looks good. We see it.
Amazing, yeah.
Nice.
It's really good.
It is Bobby.
You know, I still marvel at this whole phenomena of Bobby the artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just crazy. I mean, you know.
His talents never cease.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to see what I could, how this will develop in like 5 years and stuff, because it's fun doing this stuff, but it just keeps.
You're setting up like a YouTube page, or a YouTube channel, or whatever they call those things, you know?
YouTube, and it'll be called The Graphite Apologist. And what I'll do is I'll draw different apologists and I'll answer different apologetic arguments. So, for example, I'm working on a piece of William Lane Craig at the Sheldonian Theater in Oxford, and Richard Dawkins wouldn't debate him. So Craig comes out with an empty chair. So I drew Craig with an empty chair, but then I have Dawkins hiding out in the ceiling. So it's realistic. And you'll see me, I'll explain the story, and it'll come together in 60 seconds if it took me 15 to 20 hours to draw. Or C.S. Lewis in a sidecar. I've worked on a piece where I'll show his conversion, but then he'll be in a sidecar, but he'll be stopped in the middle of the road as he confronts Aslan. Mm-hmm. So I got different concepts like that. I'll be paying attention to like videos that are going viral. I'll be working on one with Mike Winger exposing Benny Hinn. I'm going to put Benny Hinn in sheep's clothing, and then he'll be the wolf, and then Mike Winger will be looking through a magnifying glass, and it'll say exposed. So that's the kind of stuff you'll see in 60-second reels, and I'll just tell the story.
Wow.
Oh, so 60-second reels. So those will be brief.
Yeah, you're going to see a whole drawing come together in 60 seconds that took 15, 20 hours.
Oh, wow. I love those where they, speed everything up, or, whatever the technology is. I sound, I'm still working on my TV remote control. I'm struggling with that. So you can imagine.
So Bobby's gone from the 1-minute apologist to the 1-minute graphite apologist.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do a question, but I'm going to do a lot of story, and I'm just going to tell a story through art. And hopefully it'll be a creative way to get people engaged in apologetics.
Okay. Well, I'm going to work on coming up with some brilliant idea, and then you can do me. You can draw me, and I can expound my brilliant idea, whatever that's going to be.
That would be a blast. We can do that.
Yeah. I'm sure you could do the drawing. I just don't think I can come up with a brilliant idea. So it might take a while.
Well, yesterday we came up with your next book, remember, on yesterday's program. Do you remember what that was?
My next book. What was
remember,
it?
Bobby?
My next book?
No, Brian's next book. We were having a conversation
something about the Edomites, I'm sure.
Oh, that's right. Yes, there you go, Bobby.
Oh, yeah.
You can draw Brian teaching about the Edomites.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be a fun one. I'll stick him in Petra and I'll put Harrison Ford from Raiders of the Lost Ark discovering on their journey the lost Edomites.
That's right. All right.
That'll work. 888-564-6173 is our number. And you can also send in your questions on kwave.com. We've got a form there on the Pastor's Perspective page that you can fill out, and that gets your question to us. Or you can go to the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page, use Messenger to submit your question, or you can go to the Pastor's Perspective Instagram. That is what Amy did. Amy says, I've barely begun reading the Bible. I'm in Exodus, but some of Genesis was uncomfortable to read. Is it okay to skip the Old Testament? Brian, what do you tell Amy?
No.
Okay, next question.
At some point, I do recommend for people, especially new believers, I think a journey through the New Testament is where you start. And once you read through the New Testament, then I would say go back then. And what you're going to find is this is all connected. So you're going to go back to Genesis, and then Genesis is going to make a bit more sense when you read it through the lens of the New Testament. There will be things you're going, oh, okay, wow. Okay. So that's why I read that in the Gospels, or that's why Paul said that. Now, Genesis, in my opinion, is one of the more, enjoyable reads in the sense that it's a great narrative all the way through versus something like Leviticus where you have just a lot of laws being laid down with very little narrative element to it. So it's just a more of a challenging kind of a read. Where Genesis, I love just reading Genesis because to me it's such a thrilling narrative from the very beginning with creation all the way through. Of course, Adam and Eve, and then you have Cain and Abel, then you have Noah and his sons, and then you have Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and all of that. It's a great read. So,
Bobby?
Yeah, I concur. One of the things that happens too, you start reading the Bible and you get totally confused and you just try to get the big picture of it. But then the more you keep reading it, you'll come up with different things that you start doing as you keep going through the Word. Like, for example, I'm going through the book of Judges right now, and I'm just finding myself trying to get in my head better the order of the judges from Othniel to Ehud to to Deborah and in Gideon. I'm just trying to think through. Actually, it's Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, Gideon, and trying to think through that. And I start repeating that to myself, the order a little bit. Because what that does is it kind of helps you to think about chronological flow that's going on in the text. And you just look for new ways. Like genealogies used to be so boring, and frankly, they're still pretty boring, but they can actually be fun if you look at it from, okay, I'm going to be bored reading these lines, but let me look for maybe it features something about somebody. And then why did this person get featured? Like for Shamgar, like he took out, 600 people with an ox goad, but it doesn't give a whole lot about him. So you just chew on that for a little bit, and the Bible just is endless. It's amazing.
Amy, thank you for sending in your question on the Pastor's Perspective Instagram. And now let's go to the phones. Maybe we'll read some more submitted questions a little bit later. But right now, we want to talk to Diana in Torrance. Thanks so much for calling in to Pastor's Perspective today, Diana. 888-564-6173 is the number she called, and you can call too. How can we help you?
So I joined this group on Facebook. It's called International Sermon, 8 Days. And they were talking about how God is going to come as the Son of Man. But when they said Son of Man, they were saying that he was going to descend secretly. And they said that if we didn't know this, that we would miss it and that we would go to hell.
Oh, my.
And then the last thing that they said was they had this man talking, or it was a machine that was being used, and this is what it said. It said, great excitement for you, yet you should know that the time when Jesus descended from the heaven is also the time when you go down to hell to be punished. It will herald the end of God's management plan and will be when God rewards the good and punishes the wicked, for the judgment of God will have ended before the man sees signs. When there is only the expression of truth, those who accept the truth and do not seek signs and thus have been purified shall have returned before the throne of God and entered the Creator's embrace. Only those who persist in the belief that the Jesus who does not ride upon a white cloud is a false Christ shall be subjected to everlasting punishment, for they only believe in Jesus, who exhibits signs but do not acknowledge the Jesus who proclaims severe judgment and releases the true way of life.
Have you guys ever heard of anything like this?
Well, yes, we've heard of many kooky things, and this is just another one of them. But Diana, how did you stumble on this group?
So my friend, she was on Facebook. She was my hairdresser, and then we became good friends. And she said, "Oh, I want you to know the truth about this. Are you interested in doing this 8-day Bible study?" And I said, "Sure." Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it has to be at a certain time. And if I miss it, they get upset and this and that. And it's kind of like a Jim Jones thing. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, if I miss it, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you're not serious about the kingdom. And then they were using like verses. I stand at the door and knock.
Yeah.
And they're talking about that Jesus is going to come as a man and he's going to stand at the door and knock. To my thing is he's standing at man's door knocking for him to come in. But they're like using the verses. Mm-hmm. They're like twisting them.
Yeah. Well, and you're seeing that clearly. So the smartest thing you could do is just disengage from that entirely. And, if your friend wants to talk to you about it, maybe you could ask, tell her about this program. She could call in and ask us about it. But it's just another one of the crazy things that go around. A lot of stuff about the second coming. And this isn't necessarily anything new. This kind of stuff has happened for centuries. People come up with all kinds of wacky theories about the second coming, and the Bible tells us about the second coming. Jesus says, as the lightning flashes from the east to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. And so, the idea of some sort of a secret coming of Jesus, that he's going to come as a man and come and knock at your door, that's just, it's just kooky. So the best thing to do is ignore it, because you're probably not going to be successful in persuading any of the people in the group that they should not be part of the group. So I would just recommend, not participating in that at all. And then, again, if your friend wants to talk to you about it, you can kind of see where to go from there. But, Bob, you got any thoughts on this?
I mean, I just... I just concur. I think one of the dangers is when people find themselves paying attention to this kind of stuff, it just becomes a real, problem, because there's all kinds of stuff out there, and you have to just kind of shut that out, as Pastor Brian said. But, I always get concerned when people start buying into something that's novel or some unique perspective that somebody's pulling out. And I don't know how people feel confidence in doing that. Like, I take confidence in a collective theological history that we're committed to versus trying to come up with something novel. And so if I see something in the Bible and it seems like it's going to be a unique take on something where it's going to be, totally different than the way the church has seen it, I'm just going to assume I'm wrong, because I believe that God works through the body of Christ, and these independent people that take the Bible and then they go start a movement off selective stuff like this is really dangerous. And I just think we should, and we can't, it'll always be there. You're always going to have people doing this stuff, but yeah, you don't want to get sucked into that.
That just allows me to once again make my case for radio, because like everything you hear here on our station, K-Wave, it's been vetted. So you're not going to hear anything odd. That's not to say that if you don't hear something on K-Wave that it's odd, but I'm just saying that definitely the stuff you hear on K-Wave is vetted. We know it's doctrinally correct, so you can keep on listening to us. Anybody can post anything they want on Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, and without any kind of, accountability. So, yeah, no bueno. Diana, thank you for calling in today on Pastor's Perspective. And now here's Mark in Murrieta, who listens to us on FM 107.9. What's up, Mark?
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Good. Doing well, thank you.
Oh, I had a question about the stoning of Stephen in the book of Acts, chapter 7, I believe. When he was being stoned, he looked up to the heavens and saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God. What was he actually seeing there? Was it just heaven? Was it his passing, or was it something more significant?
What do you think, Brian?
Well, when Jesus ascended, he ascended into heaven, and he's seated at God's right hand. And, the Lord said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. And that season where God is bringing all things into submission to Jesus is the season that began at the ascension and is still going on today. I think it's interesting that it says that he saw Jesus standing at the right hand. And
right.
Yeah, and commentators have commented on that Jesus stood to welcome. So Stephen, he is the first person to die for the faith. And so he's receiving a special welcome, in a sense, from the Lord as the Lord stands to greet him as he enters into his presence. So I think it's a real description of what was actually happening for Stephen at the time.
Would that happen to us as basic Christians?
Well, I mean, I think things like that could happen. I don't know about the standing part, but, there's stories of Christians who, on their moment of departure, have seen the Lord. The famous evangelist from the 19th century, D.L. Moody, the description of his death is fascinating because he is on his deathbed, and he sees a vision of the Lord, and he is just expressing what he's seeing. And one of the really fascinating things about it is he sees his granddaughter who had died, but he didn't know she had died because they had kept it from him because They thought it would be too overwhelming for him in his state of sickness. And he actually sees her in this vision where he's seeing the Lord as he's literally departing to heaven. And he even says to those in the room, "Oh, you didn't tell me that Emma had gone to be with Jesus." And then, he's just describing what he's seen. And he's having an experience like that where the Lord is welcoming him in. And so I don't think that happens with everybody in that way, but it certainly does at times, and I think Stephen sort of sets a precedent for it.
Thank you, Mark, for calling in today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173. To San Marcos we go. Here is Patsy watching us on YouTube right now. Patsy, what's your main question for us today?
Hey, you guys. I, as always, adore you. This may seem bizarre, but Malachi 3:6, "For I am the Lord, I do not change." And a few more sentences after that, which could be very pivotal in this. But dang, I have walked with the Lord for more than 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the world is changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changing harshly. And I, unfortunately, am a fan of Facebook. I am still in the area where I went to high school. And it's just brutal listening to,
So what are you wondering if there's a way that you can, my suggestion is just get off Facebook. That's probably the easiest thing to do. But Bobby, any thoughts on how to navigate this ever-changing world, though God never changes?
Well, I think that your advice is good from the standpoint if it's troubling you or, creating your mental health, creating mental health issues where you're just bothered and disturbed, there is an easy solution. You're not obligated to be on there. And honestly, if I wasn't a pastor and involved with social media ministry, I wouldn't be on social media myself. I would like having the internet, but nature of what I do, it becomes part of it. But boy, I could think, how great would that be if you didn't have any reason to go online? You wouldn't have to look at that stuff because it affects us all. And so you're not alone in that. And unfortunately, it's exhausting. It's exhausting watching the news. It's just, you just hear Democrats putting down Republicans and Republicans putting down Democrats. And it's like, man, Lord, give somebody a vision that can pull us together, because we're so divided as a nation. We cancel each other. People turn into ferocious wolves when they're on their keyboards. And it's just a really unfortunate thing. And to try to change it, you'll just get more vexed if you go on and start trying to, it would be great, but we really need people with massive platforms to say, we need to learn people skills, and we need to learn how to communicate more tastefully with each other. But that's what I would say. Just don't pay any attention to it. And if it bothers you, if you can find a way for it not to bother you, because you say that's what you want to do, you want to keep watching it, but find a way for it not to bother you, well, then that's another question. And that's really hard.
Yeah, whether it's politics or religion or whatever. We had Diana call earlier, and it was asked to join this Facebook group that was spewing all this weird religious stuff. So it's just like, it's almost like the Pastor's Perspective Facebook and YouTube pages are the only safe things out there. So just stick to us. And soon, Bobby Conway's new channel, which is going to be called what again, Bobby?
The Graphite Apologist.
The Graphite Apologist. Write that down, people, and then start following it when it goes live.
Yeah, I think too, you do. Some people maybe just need to go sort of cold turkey off of social media. I think other people are able to balance it out. And, just stay away from the negative stuff. The hard thing these days is you get so many. In the early days of social media, you followed people, and then those were the people that showed up in your feed, and then all of that changed, and everything went commercial, and now, 90% of your feed is stuff that you're like, wait, I didn't sign up for this. Who is this person, and why are they in my feed? And so it can be pretty challenging to try to just, avoid all of that stuff, but. I'm at a place myself where I just don't, I rarely make any statements on social media, and I never comment on anybody's statement for the most part, unless it's something positive. But it's just because, as much as, like you were saying, Bobby, as much as it would be nice if people were nice, people are not going to be nice because sin just has a way of just grabbing hold of us in the area of our tongues, and everybody feels justified in their position, and therefore they feel justified in their expressions of their position, and it's just kind of a endless cycle of debate and argumentation and cancellation. So.
888-564-6173 is our number. Patsy, thank you for calling in today with your question, and we've got about 30 more minutes to go, so everyone else call in, 888-564-6173. Here's the two questions that were sent in online from Kathy and Paul on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page. One of them we kind of talked about yesterday, but I don't think it's a follow-up question. They want to know, can you explain limited atonement? How does Calvary Chapel view limited atonement? And the other question, in Psalm 23, why does the text refer to the shadow of death rather than death itself? Bobby, what say you?
I think the shadow of death, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I think that the shadow of death would just be that he always sensed that death was near, and he was being pursued and chased. And so the shadow of death wanting to swallow him up. And so I think he's just using a metaphor to say, though I have reasons to fear dying, I'm going to fear no evil. I'm going to trust in the Lord. And so that's what I'd say to that. And then I'll throw it to Pastor B on limited atonement.
Bobby, on the shadow of death, though, it's interesting that a lot of the newer translations are translating that portion as the darkest valley, rather than the valley of the shadow of death. And apparently,
that is interesting.
Yeah, apparently in the Hebrew, because I noticed that in one of the Bibles I was reading the other day. It said that the darkest valley, and I thought, okay, I wanted to kind of follow back into the Hebrew and see, like, okay, why are they translating it that way? And it does seem like in the language there's a little bit of room, for a different way to express it. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. That's when you compare various versions of the Bible, you get sometimes slightly different translations of portions of Scripture, and that just is, people thinking after many, many years of research and study, like, oh, this is maybe a better way to communicate this than what was in the past. So, but I like the valley of the shadow of death myself. So, that seems to be very poetic and descriptive. Calvary Chapel, you asked about Calvary Chapel and limited atonement. Calvary Chapel, we believe that Christ died for all people. So we wouldn't hold to the position that comes within the 5 points of Calvinism, the position of limited atonement. And so total depravity, we believe that, but I think we have a bit of a different interpretation than the Calvinist. Unconditional election and limited atonement follows unconditional election. And those are just points that we would disagree with and believe that the Bible, you have to leave out certain statements of Scripture in order to hold tight to those perspectives, I think.
Kathy and Paul, thank you for sending in your question on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook Messenger. We're going to take a break. More of your questions coming right up. 888-564-6173. We're back on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is our number. We would love to chat with you. We've got Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway here till 4 o'clock. 888-564-6173 is the number to call, and we're going to go to, is that Arkansas? AR, Arkansas, right? AK is Alaska. So AR must be Arkansas. Hi there, Brody. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me.
How do you know about Pastor's Perspective in Arkansas?
I'm actually calling from a men's restoration center here called the House of Luke Ministries, and our pastor listens to it every day, so we get to listen as well.
That's great.
So, we get to hear all your shows and everything, and as we're doing our Bible studies and our, pre-meal devotionals and everything, it's a great way to kind of relax and stuff like that.
So cool.
Yeah, we're happy to be with you there.
Yep.
So anyway, my question was yesterday at a praise and worship time at Faith Life Church, I had a question that arose from me reading Isaiah 24 and 25 about the feast that the Lord has for us. Is it going to be here on earth or is it in heaven? And I guess if you guys could elaborate in any way on Isaiah's revelation versus John's revelation, if there's enough time, I would welcome that as well.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you heard yesterday. I think I commented on Isaiah 25 yesterday, and because it is an astounding promise, and it's referring to what we might sometimes call the kingdom age. So it's referring to the time when Jesus comes and sets up his kingdom on the earth. So I think the context here is the earth. And on this mountain, verse 6 says, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all people a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest wines. On this mountain he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. So the mountain is a reference to the kingdom. So on this mountain, in this kingdom reign of Christ, this is marked by feasting. So I mean, it's a little bit of poetic kind of imagery here. It doesn't necessarily mean we're just going to have a 24/7 feast kind of a thing going on. It's just talking about the glory of the abundance of good things that are going to be ours when the Lord sets up his kingdom on the earth. And not only are we going to have all of these wonderful, delightful experiences, but the experience of death will be no longer part of the world. So, covering or taking away the shroud that has covered all people.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Right. Tell everybody there in Arkansas about Pastor's Perspective.
Now, Bobby knows a little bit about Arkansas. You should have jumped in there because you used to live in Arkansas, correct?
I did.
And your lovely wife is from Arkansas.
Yes, she sure is.
Yep. Texarkana, do you know where that is, Bobby?
Yeah, I do. We lived in, I lived in Fayetteville the first time I was there, and then we lived in Conway, Arkansas, and then my wife's from North Little Rock, and we spent a little bit of time living in Maumelle.
Yeah.
So those were some of the different spaces. It's a very quaint, like peaceful, laid back. I like the freeways there. It's just slow. It's just a different world.
We have slow freeways here in California, Bobby. I don't think that's what you mean, though.
Yeah, exactly.
They're slow for a different reason. Is there a Fayetteville in every single state in the Southeast? I mean, it's like they're everywhere.
I know, right? They're all over the place.
It's like some General Fayette or what? Where did Fayetteville come from?
Let's look it up online.
You got one in North Carolina, right? Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fun. 888-564-6173. Dan sent a question online on the Facebook Pastor's Perspective Facebook Messenger. That's what I meant to say. Dan from Temecula says he keeps seeing ads on TikTok for a book titled Rose Book of Bible Charts, Maps, and Timelines. This book looks amazing and easy to understand, but I'd like to know if it's biblically accurate before reading it. Now, Rose Publishing has been around for a long time.
So it's great. It's good. It's basically just like resources like that where they give you archaeological stuff and they give you, chronological things, dates and places and all of that stuff. Yeah, Rose is a great publisher.
Yeah, and we have some Rose Publishing resources available at the Chapel Store of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so check that out over here on the campus of Calvary Costa Mesa, which is also where K-Wave is, and lots of fun. By the way, this weekend, this Sunday at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, K-Wave, the flagship station of Pastor's Perspective, is going to be there during both services, and we'd love for you to come out and say hi and help us kick off our 40th anniversary celebration. How fun is that? Are you going to be there this Sunday?
I'm going to be there, yes.
Yay.
It's going to be so fun.
You can serve cake. We need somebody to serve cake.
Yeah, I'll be right there serving the cake. Yep, and then that evening, Sunday evening, we will be
back to basicing.
We will be back at the church at 6:30 for Back to Basics Live, which is our time of teaching through the Bible and specifically through the New Testament and even more specifically through the book of Acts currently. And so we're going to be picking up in chapter 5 and just having a good old Bible study Sunday nights at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, 6:30 in the Fellowship Hall.
Very nice. Get more details about Calvary Costa Mesa on their website, cccm.com, stands for Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa, cccm.com, and find out more about the Back to Basics Live Bible study at backtobasicsradio.com/live, or just go down to the very bottom of the backtobasicsradio.com website. There's a link there.
So you guys heard about the death of Val Kilmer?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that. No, was that today?
Today, yeah.
Last night, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. Wow.
Yeah, 65 years old. So, not too old, really.
Not at all.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked, but apparently he had cancer a while back. He had battled cancer. I think he came through that, but
They say he died of pneumonia.
He did. Yes, he died of pneumonia. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
You saw Top Gun too. Remember, you could tell his throat was still compromised as he was struggling at that time.
He was. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Wow. I think back to Top Gun 1 and just being in high school. I mean, he was just a young kid, and he went to 65 already and is gone. It's just crazy.
I saw this thing on, you know how like on Instagram they will have like actors, and they will show them when they were young, and then they morph into themselves today. And I saw this one the other day, and James Spader, the guy who played in
Spider-Man? Spader-Man.
Raymond Reddington, Blacklist. He was in Blacklist. Okay, look at this picture of him right here. Look at the contrast. Look at him as a young guy with a full head of hair.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah. It's like when I saw that, I thought, what? How could this guy become that guy? So it's pretty shocking, really.
Man, yes.
I'm just thankful that I've kept my youthful good looks,
That's right. You get to Hollywood and start that, modeling Blue Steel style.
Bobby can show you all the modeling you need to know. He's got lots of tips, right, Bobby? You tried it for one day and then it didn't work out. So you'll have to check with Michael. He'll tell you more. 888-564-6173 is our number. You can also send in your questions online, which is something James did, not James Spader, unless he's using a different name, different last name, an alias. So James writes, I've been following K-Wave for many years. I started listening in the early 1990s. I'm always grateful for your programming and words of wisdom from God's book. That is so cool. Before we get to James's question, that reminds me of something else I was going to say. On our website, kwave.com/40story, you can submit your memories about K-Wave, like what has K-Wave meant for you personally? How has it helped you grow? You can either send it as like an email or a voice message or a short video. So get all the details online at kwave.com/40story, 40 story, STORY. So here's James's question. And he says it's one that's been bothering him for a long time. I was married to my daughter's mother for a very short time. We probably were not meant for each other. We fought like cats and dogs. My ex-wife claimed to be a devout Catholic. I was a strong Christian. We were far from perfect and didn't even go to church. We divorced at a young age, and we've both demonstrated our disdain for one another. My ex has continually made life a living nightmare for my daughter and me. My daughter has 3 teenagers, and they've only visited with my ex a handful of times. The oldest grandchild is 18. My daughter and grandkids just returned from a visit with the ex and had a horrible time. They often referred to their grandmother as Satan. My question is, does God protect us by changing the circumstances in our lives to keep us safe? As a devout Christian and believer, I can say the ex is not a believer and continues to make life difficult. Did God steer me towards a divorce to get away from the evil one, as James puts it? Just a question I've had for years. God bless you guys. Bobby, what do you say to James?
Well, I can't answer the latter. I mean, if there was an affair or something, and you chose to do that, I don't know that speaking on the divorce thing, that would require a lot more information. But does God always protect us from evil circumstances? And the obvious answer is no. There's a lot of bad things that happen to godly people, and being a Christian doesn't necessarily safeguard us from that. We can know that God will protect us to work out his will, and there's a certain sense, as it's been said before, we're indestructible until God's finished with us, as long as we're walking in his will. But in other words, like nothing to fear about losing your life when you're walking in God's will, because the time will be the time. But I think that there's just tough things. And, I just hear that and I'm sorry. I mean, there's just people that are like that. And the sad thing about it is usually the people that make life most difficult for people are the people that don't think that they're difficult people. And therefore, it makes it very difficult to talk to a difficult person like that.
Very true.
Yeah, it's quite difficult.
Yes.
I would agree.
I think it's the difficultest of difficult things to do.
Well, but like you're saying, Bobby, Cheryl and I were having a conversation that kind of echoed some of this today, because you're talking about, the problem is a person doesn't see themselves as difficult because they just sort of justify all of their feelings and all of their actions, like they have a right to that. And so how could they be wrong, or why should anybody be offended by that? Or why should anybody perceive them to be difficult? Because, my position is right. And so, of course, you should just accept it. So
it's always the other person's fault.
Yeah. This is...
That's a narcissist.
This is...
I think that's a difficult personality.
This is why Jesus came and died, because we just are broken.
Yep.
We're broken folk.
James.
But we really do need wisdom, don't we, on how to deal with the narcissists, because that is a unique personality. They do not have empathy, so that they can't really feel for others. They're always the hero, and everyone else is the villain. And it's just very difficult. They don't see where they're wrong. And the sad thing is, you can't even, like, a narcissist won't even believe that they're a narcissist. But if everybody around you is saying you're a narcissist and you have difficult relationships everywhere you go, it's time to do an inward look. Just a little bit more agreeableness and just trying to validate and be empathetic can go so far toward unity in this world. But man, people are so insistent sometimes, and it makes life brutal. And some of those people want it to feel that way.
Yep.
I did it. No, I didn't do it. Narcissist is one of the hardest words for me to spell. I don't know why. I can spell...
N-A-R-S. Try S.
No.
C.
I think it's a C.
S.
There's an S in there.
S.
Nope.
No, there's an S after the C or before the C.
Nope.
Well, that was narcissist.
I refuse to go on.
You forgot to put an I in there.
Narcissist.
C-I-S-T.
No. Yeah, I don't want to look it up. Say it again, Bobby. Say it again. We're doing on a on-air spelling bee here. Bobby, spell the word narcissist.
And Brian is
losing.
Failing miserably.
Yeah. Narcissist.
Not 3 S's, right?
Or if it's narcissist, then it would be
there it is.
Ending with US.
Narcissist. Perfect.
Yes.
You and Bobby.
ISSISSIPPI.
Good job, Bobby.
Yes, indeed.
That PhD did pay off.
All right. Thanks for joining us for the Pastor's Perspective Spelling Bee. 888-564-6173. Here's Kathy and Colton. How can we help you, Kathy?
Good afternoon, guys. Thank you so much for taking my call. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
I lowered my radio down. I don't want it to get in the way. I'm driving.
We appreciate that.
There was a little bit of pause there. I decided to give you a buzz. I don't know where the scripture is, and maybe it's not exactly in these words, but it says that God, our Lord, has the keys of death. And, people die, and you hear of God, resuscitating, bringing people back to life. If he has the keys, how is it that there could be prayer and somebody be brought back to life? My pastor at my church went out with a medical team to, to help people in third world countries. And there was a routine surgery. I can't remember now what exactly it was, but the child died. And they went and asked him to come and pray, and he had been already passed for, for some time. And by the time he actually got there, it was, I don't know how many hours. And he just, he was, it was a very trying time, but he prayed.
Mm-hmm.
God brought little boy got back to life. And I've always just been curious. How do we know when, if he has the keys of death, and nobody can snatch us out of his hand, and that's something different because that's salvation. How does the death part come in? Jesus raised, the little girl, Tabitha, Lazarus, but if they die in the first place, is that the enemy that's coming to steal and to kill, like the Bible says in John 10? He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But then God will still, resuscitate and bring that. Dorcas, I think it was, she was another one that God brought back to life after she had died.
Brian, what do you say?
Well, I think, maybe understanding what Jesus meant. It's Revelation 1:18, where he says that I am he who was dead. I am alive forever, and I have the keys of death and the grave. So the keys are symbolic. There's not, an actual set of keys. It's symbolic language for authority. I have authority over death and the grave. And he demonstrated that authority. I was dead, behold, I am alive forever. And so Jesus has the authority over death. So Jesus can give power for people to come back from the dead, as we would see in a number of cases recorded in the New Testament. And probably, although the documentation sometimes is lacking, but I have heard stories myself of people that have been brought back from the dead in modern times in certain circumstances. And so we shouldn't be surprised that happens, because Jesus has the authority over death.
Bobby, any thoughts from you?
Nope, I concur.
All right, then. Let's go to Robert in Upland. What's your question for us today on Pastor's Perspective, Robert?
Hi. I was in a BSF Bible study on Revelations, and we were looking at after Armageddon, and Jesus has called his church up, and he's taken his places on the throne and in the new world. And then they're going to, after the 1,000 years of Satan being in the bottomless pit, and they release him, and he deceives all these people on the earth. Now, who are these people? And I'm assuming that there are other people that were already that were on the earth that didn't die in Armageddon. And so that's, that was my question. Who are these people that get deceived? And the other thing is, is there any death during the 1,000-year reign of Jesus during that time?
Bobby, what do you think?
Yeah, so these are going to be unbelievers that will come out. Like, everybody's not going to die at the end of the tribulation. There's still going to be people that are going to go into the millennium, and there's going to be believers that will become believers during that time, and there's going to be lots of lost people, and so there'll be that combination, and so that's one way to understand that. And then, what was the second question?
Is there going to be any death during? Are people going to die?
Oh,
during that
yeah. Because think about it like this: now, if you have people that are unredeemed and they are there, and if it's 1,000-year reign, well, you don't. It's hard to imagine, right? Like, okay, so let's say somebody survives the tribulation, and they're 60 years old. Well, they're not going to live another 1,000 years, so they're going to die. And so even the person who is non-believer that becomes a believer, that person would die and then have to get his glorified body. And then you have so it's a weird situation when you think about it, like to wrap your head around picturing non-believers engaging people with glorified bodies and still not believing. Like that's a very interesting thought. Like you talk about like the hardness of heart, like that just lets me know, man, our hearts must, because it would seem like, hey, I want to cash in on one of those glorified bodies. Obviously, this is the real deal, but there's going to be such a hatred. And you can imagine, I think a lot of that hardness that people are going to have during that season, it will be structured and built out because those that survive the tribulation, it says that they just hated God, right? And so you can imagine them passing this story on of how God destroyed them. And it would just be like, they're just like a Pharaoh that's hardening their heart no matter how much. So you think about Pharaoh, he sees all these miracles, but he will not repent. And so the glorified body, so to speak, is a miracle, and people will still not turn. And so Pharaoh would get more hard because of the destruction. Well, people are going to experience a lot of destruction and tribulation, and I think that's going to make their heart even more callous, and they're going to pass on that narrative, and it's going to be like family loyalty to not believe.
Brian, 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Yeah, I think that I think a simple way to understand the situation in the millennium is that death is the exception rather than the rule. So now death is the rule. Everybody dies. And everybody dies relatively at the same, space of time. But in the millennium, death will be rare. And so I would just say read Isaiah 65, Robert, verses 17 through, say, 20. And I think that'll give you maybe the insight that you're looking for.
Robert, thank you for calling us today from the city of Upland. And we've got to go. We are out of time on today's episode of Pastor's Perspective. We'll do it again tomorrow from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. And we would love to get your questions. Start calling maybe 7 minutes or so before 3. And that way you might have a better chance of getting on the radio, getting your question answered by either Brian Broderson or Bobby Conway or Phil Metzger. I believe he'll be on tomorrow because it's Thursday. We archive all of our episodes on Facebook, YouTube, and what's the other one? Oh, yeah, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So make sure you check it out if you missed any part of today's program or just want to share it with your friends. Good night, everybody. God bless you guys. Thanks for listening and for watching Pastor's Perspective.